So I've been talking about the relationship between being present and happiness, and I've been talking about how like bringing up more nuances, going just deeper into the different aspects of happiness. So I want to start talking about needs. And really what needs are about. And I feel like this is actually a really difficult subject to really understand. It's easy to talk about and explain in the beginning. I typically use Maslow's hierarchy of need to explain it, and I did that in the other video as well. And again, Maslow, Maslow, apostrophe S, hierarchy of needs. If you pull that up and actually look at the chart as you're listening to what I'm talking about, it will probably be a little bit easier. But one of the key things that I didn't get a chance to talk about in that video is that really you don't need to have it externally met to be happy. But it is actually important to actually have it met, but just not externally. It needs to be met internally first. And so actually, like a health, you don't actually really always get a chance to be healthy. That's not always an option. Sometimes it's just a part of fate or circumstances where you have the health that you're going to have. But learning how to be present with that and accept that and learning how to do so actually allows you to be happy as anyone who is healthy, because there's a certain kind of advantage and a certain kind of blessing that can only come from actually not having that health. And if you are in one of those circumstances and you're going through that and you feel like I'm undermining your experience, I apologize, because that's actually really not what I'm trying to do. And I'm not trying to minimize the difficulty of having a health issue. That's just really difficult, and it's not just something I would wish upon anyone. But having said that, having witnessed people and also some from my own experiences where I've seen people be happy in those circumstances, I'd like to say I know it's possible. And the only reason I want to talk about it is that if we want to have the option where we want to know that it is, then at least we can try it. And if we don't know that it's possible, then we would never go for it. And so the reason I want to mention it is because that I I believe that to be the truth, that we have the option to be happy no matter what the circumstances. Now, is that easy? Is that necessarily what we want? I'd like to say no. And I think that's why it's a difficult thing to talk about, your needs being met and not, because it's oftentimes not what we think it is. And so, starting this talk, I'd like to say if you are someone who's going through difficulty and you feel like what I'm saying undermines what you're going through, my apologies. That's actually not what I'm saying. I do know that when you're going through circumstances, it's really difficult, and sometimes the odds can be insurmountable. And I am not saying that you should be feeling differently about that. So this is not a talk about a rah, rah, rah. You should feel different. You can do it. It's not that kind of talk. It's actually a talk about awareness, where I want to raise awareness, where if this is something you'd like to explore, where you have the opportunity to explore it. But if not, then I think it's important to say, there are exceptions to all things. And it might be that you have the one exception where maybe that what I'm talking about is really not an option. And so I'd like to say I'm not saying that this is an absolute thing that's true across the board, but for those where this rings the truth and it gives hope, for those I would like to make sure that you know that there might be a way. So if you're still looking for a way, and light went out. If you're looking for a way, and you're looking for how things could be different, then there's some other things that that I'm saying might make a difference. So now, this is why I find that the talk about just trying to get the right light. Okay, thank you for your patience. So that's actually one of the reasons I say that this aspect about need is difficult to understand. And so having said that, I'm going to start with the basics, and then in the coming videos, I'm gonna see if I can kind of explain this a bit better so that it kind of can sink in conceptually, and then I'm gonna try and see if I can give some examples to really kind of bring this into focus. So it seems like the light doesn't want to stay on, so I'm gonna try a different setting here. Okay, so what is needs? What is hierarchy of needs, and how do we want to understand it within this perspective? Is needs. Before we even dive into the hierarchy of needs, the most important thing to understand about needs is that need is about balance. And if we don't understand that from a perspective of balance, then I feel like it becomes meaningless. And then balance, we're not looking for a perfect state of balance, but we're actually looking for balance in a state of, in relation to our environment. And so we're just seeking how we can actually be in balance with the circumstances that we're going through. And so let's say, for instance, if there's a famine going on and there's no way to have food, then your state of balance would be different than when there's abundance and there's lots of food and you don't have to worry about food. They're very different circumstances. So we need to understand balance from this perspective of your circumstances, and not just um, what you can see, but actually your immediate circumstances. And so it really only pertains to your circumstance in your own life. And I feel like this concept is very, very important, because then we get to look at something a little bit differently, which is you get to look at balance from the perspective of, can I find a little bit more balance right now? Instead of kind of, oh, this is the only thing that's acceptable and I need to get to there, when that actually may not be relevant. And it has nothing to do with happiness. The interesting thing about happiness is that if you get a little bit more balance than you did before, actually you feel happy. And that's what's just really interesting. And if we are in a circumstance where it can't be made better, and we really understand that, then ironically we're still happy. And so in some ways, the most important thing about your need is to understand that you're in reality, about what options you have. And understanding that ironically allows you to have happiness. And this is actually one of the reasons why in the very first video in the series that I've talked about is, the belief is a key component about these three aspects of being present, and then your needs, and then pain management. Among these three things, this is actually where belief comes in. And so ironically, when you do believe that what you have is the best you can have, which is another way of saying that, if you don't have any option to be any more balanced than you do, which means that, put in another way, is that this is the best you can have. If you understand genuinely that this is the best you can have, then you come into a state of acceptance, and this, from the state of acceptance, your pain is managed and you can become present with your life. And ironically, you start having peace. And this is very difficult to imagine, actually, for a lot of people, because oftentimes we're caught up in this place where we feel like things should be better. And so if we have been experiencing that, then just understanding and accepting that things can't be better, that this is the best you can have, we don't understand how that allows us to have peace and how that allows us to have acceptance. And the reason is because it allows us to move on and move on into a different avenue. So if things can't get externally better, then ironically our attention shifts to internally, where there can be a lot more movement. A great example of this is actually Buddhism. Buddhism was found by Buddha during times of extreme poverty and famine, where people were just dying from starvation and the harshness of the environment. That was the norm. And he realized that you could still find peace and happiness even during such circumstances. And so we know actually that it is possible. And that's why Buddhism spread so much during those times, because it turned to be really effective during harsh times. And so anyways, I will continue more on this subject, because I feel like just understanding this just makes such a big difference. Thank you.